Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I hope you had a wonderful weekend. It's a unexpectedly summer day here in Portland, Oregon. My wife has been out planting her garden, which she's been updating about on Instagram. And we've been dancing and playing Pokemon and all sorts of good things around here. Today, if you don't know what a durian is, this will be important. I don't know if you've seen durian, smelled durian, tasted durian. It's a fruit that comes from Asia. I've seen them. They can get pretty large. Like I've seen them like this, pretty big. They're spiky on the outside. They look like they could hurt. And in fact, people have been harmed by them falling out of trees. They come out of pretty big trees. And when you crack them open, they have a very strong smell. In fact, there's a saying where we lived that smells like hell, tastes like heaven, is what they would say. The first time I ever smelled one, I went into a meeting place. Oh, sorry about that. I went into a meeting place, and in the meeting place, I thought there was a gas leak. And I said something about it. Oh, no, there's a gas leak. We need to tell someone. And one of my Singaporean friends heard me saying it and grabbed me and said, "Don't tell anyone," and snuck me into the kitchen. And he said, "I brought a durian." And he gave me a taste. He said, "You're going to be amazed. It tastes so wonderful." And while it did taste much better than it smelled, I was not a huge fan of the actual taste of it. So durians. Yep, a lot of people do love it, though. You should try it if you have not. Okay, people are starting to chime in. Hello, I'm here, says Lily Me. The Scales family is here. Hi, Mr. Matt. Really excited to hear more of the story. The Scales sent me a delightful picture this morning of them eating chocolate pudding for breakfast, as God intended, which I loved. And a picture of the book there. I should have asked if it was okay to show. Maybe we'll show it later this week if that's okay with them. The Reeves are here. Hey, we are back. Hey, Reeves. Good to see you. Hope you're well. Jonathan says, "Hi, Matt. May the 4th be with you." May the 4th be with you, and also with you, I think is what I meant to say to make it more churchy. Big news today on the 4th is that Taika Waititi is going to do a Star Wars movie. That's been rumored, but today they said for sure it's true. So that's pretty exciting. Dr. Awesome says that she is here and that she's always wanted to experience durian. Oh, yes, you should. You should try it. It's actually illegal to take places like the subway and stuff like that, depending on where you are in Asia, because of the smell. And oftentimes when you see it in grocery stores, I've seen it in the States, by the way. You see it in grocery stores, it's wrapped in plastic and all sorts of things. So maybe we should get some to celebrate together at some point. The Sims are here. Hello, Sims. Good to see you. Yes. Here's a question. Wait, if you could smell the durian from the other room, how did your friend think he could keep it secret? That's a great question. He did not keep it secret. We all knew. And there were people who were thrilled that there was durian, and there were people who were angry that there was durian. And there was not a lot of middle ground on that. Caitlin's with us again. Hey, Caitlin, welcome back. Hello, excited to be reunited with Mud. That's right. Today is the chapter where we're going to hang out with Mud. Should be fun. And Patrick says, "Hey, Matt." Hey, Patrick. Good to see you. Well, let's dive in. In the meantime, while I'm reading, if you have a story about food you'd like to share, I would love to hear it. It doesn't have to be about durian or food that you don't like. It can be about food that you do like or that you love, or you misunderstood what kind of food it was going to be, or you ate something and didn't know what it was, whatever it might be. Love to hear your food stories. Food, weirdly, has a long tradition of being a big part of fantasy novels, whether it's describing pretty ordinary food. So like C.S. Lewis, this is partly because there was, not a famine, but food shortage when he was writing in World War II. But he would lovingly describe little feasts. Obviously, Tolkien would talk about food all the time, but food is a pretty traditional part of the fantasy experience. So here we go. We're jumping into chapter 19. As you might recall, Madeline Oliver and Jason Wu have come to the Sunlit Lands because Madeline is unable to breathe. The Elendil have promised her a gift that if she'll come and work for them for a year, fighting against the evil skim, that they will heal her completely. And in the last chapter, last week, what happened was they had moved into their new place where they're going to be living, which is with the Knight of the Mirror in his castle called Westwind. So that was as a result of, there was a lot of drama. Jason released a skim that had been in prison to try and save himself and Madeline. And there was a lot of difficulty as a result. And the knight begrudgingly agrees to take Jason, but willingly takes Madeline into his care. Shula has just been returned to them, and they've gone through a healing process to save her life. And much like the one that was done when Jason was nearly dead, and Madeline sacrificed the life of a skim so that he could live, but he doesn't know that. She didn't tell him. It was anyway. That's where we are. That's where we pick up chapter 19, Mud. Here we go. If truth is not your companion, death walks beside you. A Cockney proverb. Oh yeah, chapter 19. Jason was not an idiot. He'd watched Madeline perform the healing and seen the bruises go from Shula to Madeline to the skim, which meant his own wounds, which Madeline had described as near fatal, had been transferred to someone else. He suspected the words Knight's Breath were significant in this regard. His chest had been caved in. That's what Madeline had said. Could a skim survive that? He knew they healed faster than humans. He suspected that Knight's Breath was a name. He wondered if there was a way to meet him, this skim who'd saved his life. The other possibility, that Knight's Breath had died as a result of Jason's wounds, filled him with unimaginable dread. Madeline wouldn't do that. Not to him. Pay attention, Ruth said. He shook himself aware. Ruth Mabue, the weird kid with the blindfold, held his arm with one tiny hand. He had stepped into a puddle on the road. Ruth, despite having her eyes covered, had stepped around it. It's amazing how not being able to see makes your other senses sharper, Jason said. Don't be ridiculous, Ruth snapped. I have average smell, taste, and hearing. I just use them, unlike you. Jason closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He tried to sort through the smells of the court of far-seeing. He didn't smell anything disgusting now that they had left Westwind behind. The toilets at Westwind were just holes in the floor that fell several stories into the moat, which smelled like something Harry had exercised vigorously before falling in and dying. It backed up Jason's first rule of magic: poop has to go somewhere. Those magic toilets in Mrs. Raymond's place weren't eradicating whatever went in them. They were transporting it. He didn't know how. That's what made it magic. But he suspected it wasn't going to the Archon's palace. The first rule had a corollary as well. If it ain't here, it must be somewhere else. He had been thinking about Delightful Glitter Lady. To magically make her huge required a stone or some other object to become small at the same time. He remembered this from physics class: conservation of matter. Mass and energy were constant in the universe or something. Maybe that was the Pythagorean theorem, whatever. The point being, there must be something somewhere that allowed D to get larger or smaller by taking on the opposite. So his magic dial wasn't an embiggenator so much as a transference device. Ow! Ruth had pinched him. Pay attention, I said. And you immediately stopped in the street, closed your eyes, and let your brain wander. It's creepy how you talk like an adult. What are you, 8? Ruth frowned. Meanwhile, you behave like a 5-year-old. Jason gasped. How dare you? A 6-year-old at least. Charming, Ruth said. Walk us to the cloth merchant over there, the one to your right. The knight didn't usually let him or Madeline wander the city unattended, but the Archon had sent specific directions that Jason was not allowed to wear his multicolored tuxedo to the palace. He had been informed that the tuxedo clashed, quote, with everything. So Jason had been sent into the city to buy new clothes. Ruth was his babysitter. She had a tiny leather pouch tied at her waist with the money or whatever passed for money here in the Sunlit Lands. Being watched by an 8-year-old, a blindfolded one at that, did not do much for his self-esteem. He didn't even get to hold the money. He stared at the heavy little coin purse. He could keep track of something like that if they gave him a chance. A small, quick hand snatched Ruth's money satchel. Jason stepped away from Ruth and grabbed the little thief by the neck before he could escape. An unkempt skim kid wriggled in his grasp. The kid screamed and thrashed, but Jason had a solid grip. See, I was paying attention, he said to Ruth. Except she couldn't see, of course. Ugh. I caught a pickpocket, he said. I hear him, Ruth said. What is your name? She asked the kid. The ugly little thing scowled at her. He peeled his gray lips back, showing them his protruding yellow teeth. Mud. Why are you stealing from me, Mud? I'm hungry, he said. We're going to buy some fruit. Ruth took the leather satchel from Jason, slipped it open, and dropped a large metal coin in Mud's hand. His eyes widened, and he looked quickly at the blindfolded girl in a way that made it clear he suspected she didn't realize how much money she had dropped in his palm. Thank you, mistress, he said, ducked his head, and ran across the street where a small knot of skim kids enveloped him. They disappeared into a nearby alley. That better not have been my top hat money, Jason said. Top hats have specifically been vetoed. Outrageous. Who does the Archon think he is? This is a free country, and I can wear a top hat if I want. He realized with a strange little shock that the Sunlit Lands were not the United States, and he was still fuzzy on the political setup. Wait, is this a free country? It was Madeline who vetoed the hat, Ruth said. She described your previous hat in great detail. All the girls in the castle were laughing. One girl nearly fainted. All the girls? Jason asked. Who's that, besides you and Shula and Madeline? Ruth smirked. That's who I was talking about. Philistines, he muttered under his breath. Still, you shouldn't give little thieves like that money. You're just contributing to the problem. Ruth's face went still. You've never been poor, have you, Jason? Who, me? No way. My parents worked hard. There's a reason I hardly ever saw them, but we had money. So what would you suggest that little ruffian do? How would he eat if I didn't give him money? Jason sighed. You could give him a job or something, I guess. Can we go buy my suit now, please? You don't have any money, Ruth said. How will you get a suit? Why are you acting like this? Are you... Oh, Ruth had been poor. Maybe here, maybe back on Earth, but she had lived without money. Maybe she had stolen fruit to survive herself. Maybe she'd been a pickpocket on the street. I'm sorry, Jason said. I am. But stealing is wrong. Of course it is, Ruth said, as if it was the most obvious thing in the world. But can honesty fill a rumbling stomach? I suppose not. No, Ruth said. Now walk over to the fruit stand and steal a piece of fruit. There was a fruit stand across the road from them on the right-hand side. Jason could smell it from here, the rich, pungent smell of ripe citrus baking in the sun. Jason said, as your elder, I feel like I should set a good example by not stealing a piece of fruit. The stand had stacks of beautiful fruit, carefully arranged. A human girl stood behind it. There were other stands, too, selling other things, carpets, buttons, vegetables, so on. You have never worked for your money, Ruth said, her head cocked to one side. It was more statement than question. I did chores at home. Chores. She rearranged the cloth covering her eyes. I also did chores. She tapped her fingers against her lips. That street thief has worked harder in the last month than you have in your entire life. Jason laughed. Okay, I get it. Feed the street kids is fine. Bring me a piece of fruit, Ruth said. She faced forward, waiting for an answer. She wasn't going to drop it. This whole thing was ridiculous. He took a quick look around and didn't see any of the city guards. A lot of them were humans anyway, and he had met them when they all lived together at Mrs. Raymond's. Anyway, he lived with the Knight of the Mirror now. That should give him an out if he got caught. What kind of fruit should I get? Whatever kind you want, Ruth said. Fine, Jason said. He left her standing on the other side of the street. He couldn't avoid the feeling she was watching him, even though he knew that wasn't possible. The young woman running the stand said, May the light shine upon you, sir. Can I help you? Jason surveyed the fruit. An amazing variety of beautiful fruits were perfectly arranged by color. Oranges, apples, pineapples. A few things he had never seen before. What's that one? Addleberries. They only grow here in the Sunlit Lands. Ooh, what's that? Guanabana from Costa Rica. Huh, that was interesting. They must have some sort of deal set up or train birds that flew fruit back and forth or Well, who knew in this place? Maybe they had magic penguins who carried the fruit in little backpacks. Is that a durian? Yes, it's an Asian fruit. Jason knew durian. They were gigantic, almost basketball-sized fruits with hard spikes covering the outside. If a durian fell out of a tree and hit someone, it could absolutely kill them. If you broke one open, you would be greeted by a pale, creamy fruit that smelled like a gas leak. It was the worst-smelling, edible thing Jason had ever run across. Strangely, the taste was sweet, despite the horrific smell. Most public places in Asia, like the subway, had rules about transporting durian because everyone, even people who loved the fruit, agreed that it smelled like corpses. Jason debated what to steal. He could take a grape. Technically, that would fulfill Ruth's request. The star fruit and the kiwi looked pretty good. On the other hand, walking across the street with a giant spiky monstrosity of a fruit made a lot of sense. Ruth should be able to smell that thing coming and it would serve her right. He picked up a durian, then accidentally knocked a few lemons over. When the girl bent to pick them up, he turned his back so she couldn't see the spiky baby he cradled to his body and crossed the street. "Sir," the girl called, "you forgot to pay." Jason shoved the durian into Ruth's arms, then turned around to look at the produce girl. He shrugged. "I didn't forget," he shouted. "I stole it." The girl put her hands on her waist and shouted back, "Then I'll call the city guard." "I think you should," Ruth called. "Hey," Jason said, "this whole thing was your idea." The girl let a small green bird loose from her shop, and it darted into the heart of the market. "You should run," Ruth whispered, pressing the durian into Jason's hands. Jason stared at the gigantic thorny fruit. Doesn't that make it worse? A roar came from the crowd, and then Elenil guard riding a tiger appeared. "He's looking for you," Ruth said. "Don't you wish I had given you a coin to pay for it now?" The police had tigers. He had seen Rondello's stag more than once, but tigers, that changed everything. Jason ran hands over his head, the durian bobbing above him, a stinky reminder of his thievery. "Make way!" he shouted, weaving through the crowd. The cries of people startled by a fast-moving tiger grew closer and closer. He ducked into a perfume shop, but was immediately ejected, no durian allowed. Ahead of him, he saw a familiar shape. Rondello, the captain of the guard, standing beside his white stag talking to another citizen. "Rondello!" he shouted. Then Jason rolled to the ground, wrapped in a snarling, heavily muscled tiger. When the nausea-inducing spinning ended, he was on his back, the tiger was on his chest, and the durian was still in his hands, extended over his head. The Elenil guard loomed over him, hand on his sword hilt. "Hello, citizen. What is that in your hands?" "Where were you when that skim kid was trying to steal our money?" The guard narrowed his eyes. "We will come back to that, sir. What is that in your hands?" "It's not a weapon, if that's what you're asking. I see why you might think that. Sir, did you steal that fruit?" He sniffed twice, taking the odor wafting off the durian. "Also, why?" "I did steal it," Jason said earnestly. "Your tiger won't eat me, right?" The guard grinned. "Not unless I give her permission. She follows the law. Do you understand?" "You would like her to follow the law, right?" "Yes," Jason said. At a signal from the city guard, the tiger moved off his chest. "Go back and apologize and pay for what you've stolen. Do not do that again. You do not wear the white any longer. You should know what is expected of you." "Yes, sir." The guard smiled at him, his perfect white teeth gleaming. "Now, what is this about a skim stealing from you?" "Oh, we took care of it," Jason said. "Just some kid named Mud, but we worked it out." The guard snorted. "Mud. He's well known to the guard. I will speak to him." The guard pulled Jason to his feet. "Like I said, we worked it out." The guard stared at him as if he couldn't understand the words coming out of Jason's mouth, then wandered into the crowd with his tiger. Jason let out a long breath of air. Whew! His hands were shaking. He had almost been mauled by a tiger for stealing a durian. Rondello clapped him on the back. "You have run afoul of the city guard. That is Sokar. He is 100 years my senior, but with a mercurial temper. I keep a close eye on him." "You met him in good spirits," he laughed. "He has a soft spot for humans. Be glad you weren't a skim." Jason could smell the tiger still, even over the constant stench of the durian. "What's the worst that could have happened?" Jason asked, doing his best to sound brave, like the whole event had meant nothing to him. He'd take me to jail. A memory rose of breakbones chained to a dungeon wall. Jail here might be a different experience than on Earth. He could have taken your hand, Rondello said, or killed you if he thought you a threat. Jason's stomach dropped into the soles of his shoes. Ruth was going to get an earful. Well, at least he could introduce everyone back at Westwind to durian. Honestly, it tasted great. It would be funny to watch them gagging on the smell before they tasted it. He found Ruth in the center of the market, haggling with a merchant over a pair of pants. She had already bought him a shirt, jacket, and gloves. She didn't need his sizes, she told him, because she already knew. Did you know I could have died for that durian? Yes, it was foolish to steal it. Well, I learned my lesson. No more listening to Ruth Mabue. Ruth gave the merchant some money and handed Jason the pants. We have your clothes now. Let us return home. Jason kicked the cobbled street. I need to go apologize to the fruit stand lady and pay for my fruit. The guard said I had to. Ruth's eyebrows raised from behind her blindfold. But where will you get the money, Wusong? I was hoping from you. Maybe I will offer you a job, she said, her voice grave. I get it, Jason said. Now give. He held his hand out and Ruth dropped a coin in his palm. The girl at the fruit stand smiled when he apologized, and Ruth gave her a handsome tip on top of the cost of the durian. On their way home, Jason noticed the little gang of skim kids again. They were gathered at the mouth of an alley eating oranges. There were peels discarded all around them. Some of them sat on the curb, juice running down their chins as they shoved pieces in their mouths, while others stood against the wall, peeling segments of orange away and popping them into their mouths. Better keep a hand on your purse, Jason muttered. Sokar came from the other direction, his tiger at his side. They had a lazy gait to their walk, as if they were out for an afternoon stroll. Jason knew that look. They were about to hassle the skim kids. Sokar had his hand on the hilt of his sword when he walked up to the kids. Where did you get that fruit? Sokar asked, nudging Mud with the toe of his boot. Mud gave him a surly look and kept eating. It's okay, Jason said. I already told you, we gave them the money. Sokar grunted. You buy that fruit? Mud didn't answer. The other kids didn't speak up either. Answer me, Sokar said, nudging Mud harder. The lady gave me coin, Mud muttered. Jason stepped between Mud and the guard. Mud jumped to his feet, and the guard pulled his sword with lightning speed. The other skim kids disappeared in a frenzied explosion of motion, leaving behind only peels, pulp, and mud. Stay calm, Jason said to Mud. Stand still and speak respectfully. Mud stood beside him, trembling. He leaned toward Jason, half hiding behind his leg. Did you steal that fruit, sir? Sokar asked. No, sir, Mud said, his voice quavering. Sokar shook his head. Do not lie to me. There's no need for that sword, Jason said. Get on your knees and show me your hands, Sokar said. Mud bent his knees and for a moment appeared he would do as he had been asked, but then he whipped an orange through the air at Sokar's face and dashed away for the alley. Without thinking, Jason grabbed Mud's arm, trying to get him to stand still, but Mud yanked his arm away and ran. The tiger pounced, tearing the boy's legs. Sokar, crushed orange on his face, came 2 steps behind and with one practiced lunge skewered Mud through the side. Mud fell to the ground, eyes open. An orange rolled from his shirt, coming to rest in a filthy puddle. His eyes flickered toward Jason. Jason stepped toward them, but the guard threw his hand up. Stay back! Sokar rifled through the child's pockets, throwing out pieces of crushed fruit and a short black knife. A necrotic blade, he said. Dangerous, illegal, no doubt meant for you, or someone like you, sir. The black metal of the blade didn't reflect light correctly. Jason felt a small relief to the tidal wave of guilt threatening to engulf him. Perhaps the boy deserved this if he was carrying that knife. Maybe he was an assassin, a spy, a troublemaker. He shouldn't have run, Jason thought. But then he stopped himself. He was committed to the truth, and while it made him feel better to think Mud deserved this, sure, the kid was a pickpocket, but he hadn't gotten away with the money. Ruth had given it to him. He had bought those oranges. Jason had run when he saw that tiger too, and maybe Mud needed the knife to protect himself, or maybe, Jason thought about this carefully, maybe it wasn't his knife. Sokar's back had been to Jason when he'd pulled the knife from the boy's pocket. Could he be sure the city guard hadn't planted it? He could not. The boy lay on the ground bleeding because of Jason. Yes, Mud had tried to steal something. Yes, Sokar had wielded the blade that had skewered the boy, but Jason had been the one to speak up, to say that Mud had tried to steal from them. He shouldn't have done that. But he hadn't known, hadn't suspected for a moment this would be the end result. He didn't care what happened. It wasn't worth the kid's life to stop him from stealing a handful of coins. Take him to Galenia, Sokar said to the tiger. Is he alive? Jason asked, a flutter of relief coming to him at the mention of the Elenil healer. Sokar ignored him. The tiger had lifted Mud's body in her jaws. Two members of Mud's gang appeared, shouting and mocking Sokar. One threw a piece of fruit which spattered the tiger's face. She dropped Mud, growling. Sokar, furious, shouted at the tiger, and they split up, each chasing a different skim. Jason fell to his knees beside Mud. Was he breathing? Jason couldn't tell. The black tattoos on his arms were fading, turning gray. 4 more skim children came sliding out of the shadows. Get away from him, one of the girls snarled. 2 of them lifted Mud, pulling his arms over their shoulders, and a third swiftly gathered up the spilled fruit. The girl stared at Jason, hands clenched. Why did you hold his arm when he tried to run? He didn't take anything from you. He didn't do you no harm. Jason opened his mouth to answer and realized he didn't know. Not exactly. He thought Mud shouldn't run. He'd thought on some level that if they stood there and talked it out, everything would be fine. That may not have been true because stabbing the kid wasn't a reasonable response. Not at all. Maybe he had wanted to teach Mud, to help him do the right thing. He'd wanted to teach him what was right, and only now, mud and blood on his hands, did Jason stop to wonder if he really knew what was right in this moment. What he knew with a deep, burning certainty was this: the boy's life was worth more than a few oranges, more than a whole cart of oranges. The children were gone now, all but one. Well, she demanded, and he realized he hadn't answered her. I'm sorry, he said. She spit on the ground between them. Here, Jason said, holding out the durian, take this. When Mud wakes up, give it to him. The girl lifted the durian over her head. Jason covered his face, tried to shield Ruth. The girl hurled the durian to the cobblestones with all her strength, and it burst. The stench of it exploded into the air. The sweet white meat flew up, splashing all over him, covering his new clothes. He wiped the juice from his eyes. The girl was gone. Only the crushed durian remained. The end of chapter 19. There we go. Thank you. Let's see. We've had some comments. Let's see. Jonathan says, I absolutely love Jason's laws of magic. Me too. He's a good dude with lots of good ideas. Lily Me says, Jason's first rule of magic. I love how he's sciencing magic. Jason is the best. He really is. Let's see. Patrick says, we had a Star Wars watch party this last year and made some milk with food coloring and some mint in honor of Thalassiren's Luke drank from The Last Jedi. Oh, it's that milk, right? The blue milk. Not too bad. Well, good to know. Let's see. Oh, that's right. That's why the tiger was the preview picture of this video. For some reason, my brain was thinking Tiger King. I put the tiger in there because it was more exciting to look at. That's why. Let's see. Dr. Awesome says, when we moved overseas, our neighbors gave us some squishy pinkish orange things they called raw meatballs. I gathered my courage and then ate a couple. They're pretty good. I felt really proud of myself. My friend later told me they're made of lentils and bulgur, no raw meat. Haha. Oh man, living in another country, especially when you don't speak the language, requires eating things occasionally you don't know what they are. We went with some friends to a restaurant, a friend who liked to eat kind of exotic things, which when you're, depending on where you are in Asia, exotic can mean a lot of different things. And they brought some meat out, but I'm allergic to shellfish. So I just wanted to check and make sure it wasn't shellfish. I said, is this shellfish? No one knows. The waiter doesn't know. Our host doesn't know. The chef doesn't know. They couldn't figure out what it was. So I was like, I don't know if I should eat it. We still don't know for sure what it was. I think it may be some sort of snail or something. Don't know. I did try it. It was all right. Hey, this Friday, at the request of someone here, we'll be having my friend Morgan Bussey will be joining us. She's the author of the Ravenwood Saga. Her third book, Cry of the Raven, just came out not too long ago. Morgan has won all sorts of awards. She's a delightful person. I think you will enjoy her a great deal. So don't forget, Friday at 1 Pacific, Morgan Bussey will be with us. I did ask her how to pronounce her name. I wasn't sure. And she told me Bussey like fussy. So there you go. As always, Tyndale is taking orders on the Crescent Stone and all their books right now. So if you're having trouble finding it at another bookstore or somewhere else, Tyndale would be glad to send it to you. The Crescent Stone, narrated by Natasha Sudek, a professional, is available from Oasis Audio. And as always, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe. When you like, when you comment, the magic algorithms of Facebook and YouTube say, oh, people must like this, and they show it to other people, which is good for me and good for us as a community as we get more people joining us, and good for those poor people who have nothing to do, who get to spend a half hour with us every day. And of course, if you subscribe, whether at youtube.com/MattMichelatusBooks or at facebook.com/MichelatusBooks, either way, makes it a little easier to find us day to day as we're reading. I hope you're all doing well, and I hope you have as lovely a day as we do right now in the Portland area, and that you're taking care of yourselves and others and your friends. We'll pick up tomorrow with the next chapter. Looking forward to seeing you then. Until then, be safe, be well, take care of yourself and your neighbors. Talk to you soon.